Cal, what do you think the number one card for the Lord of the Rings set is?
Ryan, it's Bill the Pony.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Playing with Power podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things cEDH, EDH, and Magic the Gathering. I am your host, Ryan.
And I am your host, Callahan, and today we are going to be talking about the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. We're going to give you both kind of our overall thoughts on the set, and we're both going to argue indefinitely about what our top 5 cEDH cards from the set are. But first, we're going to pay the bills. Tickets for our latest Mox Masters tournament are on sale now. Compete for $2,000 in prizes and points towards our invitational coming this October. Tickets sell out for each event, so pick up yours today. Our merchandise is also always available in our store. We currently have dice and coins and a nice sticker you can pre-order, and that's it right now. Be sure to keep an eye on playingwithpowermtg.com for restocks, new merch options, all that kind of stuff. It's one of the easiest ways you can support the channel. Speaking of the easiest way you can support the channel, check us out on Patreon. Patrons get access to our Discord, webcam league, play days, early access to videos, names in the credits of our show, exclusive videos, merchandise, and the ability to be on an episode. There are tiers for everyone in every budget and every level of investment in cEDH or Legacy now. So go check out patreon.com/playingwithpowermtg to help support the show. As always, if you're looking to sponsor the podcast, reach out to Ryan's email. He would love to talk to you.
I would. And speaking of people that we love to talk to, we do a Patreon shout out in every single episode. And today's Patreon shout out goes to Monty.
Hey, Monty. How's it going?
Thanks, Monty. You're the best.
You are the best.
All right. So let's talk about our top 5 cards from the new Lord of the Rings set. Now, what we are doing is we are kind of bundling both the Lord of the Rings and the Lord of the Rings Commander, since they're kind of releasing at the same time and they're kind of releasing as one thing. So this will be combined into one. So we will be choosing cards from that as well as the main set as well.
And these days, if you're looking at spoilers, it can be hard to differentiate the two as well. So
not to mention where they are, where you can get them, or where can you get the extended edition, or where you can get the other thing. Oh my gosh, they're all over the place. Some of the
it's a little tough.
Pre-release packs have commander cards in them, which you can't play in your pre-release, if I'm not mistaken. And oof.
It is. The cards that are included are the reskinned reprint, like box topper cards, I think. Yeah. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked into it that deep, and it's hard to grok.
Yes, it is. It's very hard to figure out. So you can get cards in boosters. You can get cards as box toppers, starter decks, jumpstart cards, showcase cards, alternate art borderless cards, extended art cards, scene cards. I'm not sure exactly where you get those, but those are the ones that are like the giant pictures, and they break them up into different cards. Those are really cool. There's that big battle scene that they kind of showcased when they revealed it. There's the buy a box promo. There's just regular promos.
Yep.
I don't know what the difference between that
Probably
is.
From going to Friday Night Magic or something. I don't know. And
then it's funny because if you look at Scryfall to figure out where these things are, after a while they just kind of got tired of it and they were like, cards. Yep. If you scroll down the different places, you'll see buy a box, you'll see promo, and then they're like, I don't know. And then there's cards. Here's some cards.
The other promos. Yeah, exactly.
And so it's just funny because they're like, I've run out of things to call these. It's so funny.
Yep. I think that is kind of one of my first overall thoughts about this set from somebody who's been just not passively, I write about Magic the Gathering now and that kind of stuff. And obviously I do the Playing with Power stuff. So I kind of have to actively keep up with it. But I, as somebody who's actively trying to keep up with it, when it comes to all the variations and stuff, I just don't know what's out there. I know there's the very cool treatment of the cards with the big scenes. Those are awesome. I know for a lot of the characters, there's the really cool there's a lot of very blocky color with the ring inscription around kind of a cutout of them in the color. I don't remember exactly what those are called.
Yeah, showcase treatments basically.
Yeah, they look awesome. But this is the first. Historically, I have been notoriously very anti, there's too many variations. oh, there's too many cards. Ah, mamma mia, because I don't care. I keep up with it. And sometimes if I don't keep up with it, I get some cool surprises down the line.
Mm-hmm.
But this set has been the set where I'm kind of just like, wow, there's so many versions of each different card. It's so hard to keep up with all of it. And like we even had there was a fairly prolonged discussion in our Patreon Discord this morning where somebody was like, hey, does an extended art foil of this card exist? And like several people were looking into it and reading all the different articles and the collection breakdowns and trying to go through Scryfall and that kind of stuff. And I think they were kind of working on it for like 20 minutes and they didn't come to a conclusive answer. We don't know if, I think it was like stern scolding. We know a full art, like the full art extended art of it exists. We don't know if that comes in foil or not. So, that kind of stuff's just kind of tough. But past that, that's like actually my only one complaint with the set, actually. And it's a pretty, oh no, there's too many pretty versions of my cards. It's not the worst complaint in the world to have.
Yeah, if you talk about complaints, that's really a good one, quite frankly. Oh, there's too much variety. There's too many things.
No, there's too many cool things.
Yeah, there's so many cool things. I will say that there are there is a point when you do go too far. I think the last set with the March of the Machine or something like that, it was like Aftermath. One of them where they had like 9 treatments of Elish Norn. And they considered it 9 separate treatments because there was like 5 arts and 3 different foil printings you could get on it or something. I don't know. Yep. But I was like, what a nightmare that must be. Be like trying to price it out. Shops trying to price it out. Like, oh, do you have the oil slick manga version of Elish Norn in right now? And they're like, I don't know. I have to go look and put it under a light.
We only have the normal oil slick, and we have one of the alt art serialized, and we've got the Junji Ito non-foil. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's right. The serialized cards. That's a thing, too. I forgot. Yep. I'm sorry. So that's also going to add a digit to all of these as well. There's going to be serialized versions. I'm not talking about the One Ring serialized and all that nonsense, but I'm talking about just, so it's a lot to grok.
It's a lot. I definitely feel for the people who I have seen complain about this and who I care about their complaints are like people whose full-time job it is to keep up with Magic the Gathering, like full-time Magic the Gathering writers, like my awesome editor at TCG Player, Emma Partlow. She struggles because she has a lot of stuff to keep up with. She has a lot of stuff to have to keep track of. I have friends who work for TCG Player, friends who work for SCG and pricing and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Those stores are struggling. There's a lot of stuff that they're like expected to keep in stock. A lot of stuff that they have to keep track of. All these different versions. It's tough on stores, which is always, not the best. But
right now,
personally, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course, because we're consumers of it, is what it is.
Yes.
But I would honestly, when a set first comes out, probably not buy one of those types of versions on TCG Player. I'm not discouraging anybody from buying from TCG Player. I'm saying that there is a non-zero chance that you will get the wrong card because there's 9 different versions of things. So like that's not a problem with this set, and maybe we're getting off topic, but like it's pretty obvious what you're getting when you're getting different things. It's either the foil or the non-foil or whatever, and then the treatments are pretty straightforward. But all right, so that's a slight complaint. However, as far as overall thoughts go, we wrote down a couple of notes here, and Cal, you put some stuff down, but I would definitely agree with one of your first sentiments was a masterful interpretation of the setting. From a flavor perspective, I don't think they could have done any better, quite frankly. It was wonderful. I think they did such a good job. I actually was like, I want to go draft this set. And I don't normally draft, is why that's actually says something.
Yeah, I just like want to look at these cards. Mm-hmm. I just want to like hold them. I want to play with them. It's just, I want to, I was a little like when the set was first revealed, I was kind of just like, oh yeah, I can't wait to cast Frodo or whatever. And now I'm like, can't wait to cast Frodo.
Yeah, I can't wait to cast Frodo. And it wasn't just like, here's one card that's Frodo. They were smart enough to be like, Frodo goes through a lot. How do we encapsulate one card into him? Because there was times when Frodo was innocent and small, and then other times when he was courageous and big, and other times when he was corrupted and,
Cowardly.
well, corrupt.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Corrupt. And so
Yeah.
this story was so long and they captured it so well. And it really gets you immersed in the world. I was actually reading the flavor text on cards. I never do that ever. And I was like, what does the flavor text on this say? Oh, that's so cool. They could not have done any better. They really couldn't have. Yeah. I was absolutely blown away how well they did.
That thing that you were actually just alluding to is one of my favorite kind of design tricks that they've figured out. I think like the first time they did it was Brothers War, where they said, all right, here's the uncommon Urza, and it's Urza at the Tolarian Academy or whatever. And here's the rare Urza, which is Urza in the middle of the Brothers War. And then here's the mythic Urza, which is Urza at his fully realized power as a planeswalker and that kind of stuff. Because like, it's a great way to tell like kind of the story of a character all contained within one set. You don't just see one interpretation of them. And people were shockingly against that when it was in Brothers War. And I never really got why. They're like, this is weird. No, this is awesome.
Yeah. It's not weird. It's because for 30 years, that's what they did. There was that one cornerstone pillar. This is the card of this character. And they did that all throughout things like the Weatherlight Saga back then and stuff like that. You had one card that depicted a key scene, that depicted a key character. And they were like, this is the one card you get. It was the chase card you got and stuff like that.
Yep. Exactly. Like part of me gets it. Change is scary.
No,
I've loved that they've been able to.
Yeah.
I've loved that they've been able to implement that design and creative technology that they recently discovered into this awesome set. Part of me wouldn't doubt if they were like, what if we did this for Lord of the Rings? And then they were like, wait, we could do that for Brothers War, or something like that, or probably some very close overlap there. Love that they did that, but like, like you said, based on what I wrote down, masterful interpretation of the setting. Couldn't do the flavor better. In a really big way, I think they actually did that. Is something I didn't write down here, but I have loved the box toppers for this set. The box toppers, another alternate art treatment. No, but there's a lot of awesome box toppers for this set where they snuck in a lot of really awesome blueprints, reprints. There's the Great Henge as the party tree. There's Balin's Tomb as Ancient Tomb. There's Barren Downs as Bajuka Bog. We have Cabal coffers in here. There's Cavern of Souls as Path of the Dead. There's all this kind
Caracas.
Of awesome stuff. Yeah, there's there's a Gemstone Caverns reprint. Woo! I will be buying a foil Glittering Caves of Aglaron to finally have a foil Gemstone Caverns in my deck. It's just another awesome way they were able to kind of apply more Lord of the Rings flavor to existing cards. I really like that they managed to fit that in here, because all the other cards, pretty much beyond more like reprints in the commander decks, are new cards. So it was nice to see some like reprints of especially some quite expensive cards. Like there's Cavern of Souls in here. There's Cavern of Souls in here.
There's Cloudstone Curio in here. There's Rings of Brighthearth in here. We didn't see meaningful reprints of those.
Shadowspear is an expensive card now too.
Like they saw what was actually those cards that commander players really love, and so the cards end up creeping up in price a lot. Yep. And they were like, let's put those in here. And it was an easy reprint, and it was a good way to give it a really cool treatment. And it was great. Like you said, Bridge of Khazad-dûm, it's in Staring Bridge. It's really, really cool to have these reprints in here that, so they don't have to necessarily make up this big thing and still have really good flavor and stuff like that. I've never been a huge fan of alternate names for cards. That's never been my thing. However, I do think that for this set with its theme, they did a good job with it. I really do.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And moving past that, there's always like kind of the question about the power level of the set, right? And I think a lot of people were concerned coming into this set because like, it's printed directly into Modern. So all of these cards have Modern legality. And of course, all the Commander focus cards will go into the Legacy pool and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people were kind of concerned about that because Modern Horizons 1 kind of came and went. It impacted the Modern format decently, but people were like kind of happy with it, I think. And then Modern Horizons 2 came, and Modern Horizons 2 really flipped Modern on its head. But ahead of time, people were like, Modern Horizons 2, this set is pretty bad. Can we have some Modern Horizons 1 power level cards in here? Come on. And then as soon as the set actually released and people started messing around with the cards, they were like, wait, no, go back to Modern Horizons 1.
Yeah.
But right now, I think my reading of this set is that I think it's almost like maybe below Modern Horizons 1 type of power level. There's some good stuff in here. I don't think it's going to blow apart Modern. I don't think it's going to blow apart Legacy. We're going to get to talking about it pretty quick here, but not that many cEDH cards either, which I'm always happy to see from these really big sets. I don't want too much turnover in my Legacy light format of choice.
Legacy light. It's Legacy heavy.
Legacy.
I get behind Vintage
format.
Light before I get behind Legacy Light. Yeah.
Fair enough. But I have loved the power level of this set. There's a lot of good stuff in here, but it's not too crazy, which seems like a sweet spot to be.
Yeah. Modern Horizons 1, people didn't really evaluate it as well as they thought they would. And as the years went on, all the cards kept getting discovered for it. Like, they didn't print new cards into Modern Horizons 1. They just kept discovering that it was good here, this card was good there, et cetera, et cetera. Then Modern Horizons 2 basically made modern the Modern Horizons format. It just became so unbelievably broken. And I agree with you. I don't think this set is going to be... It's not going to turn Modern into Lord of the Rings, the format. It's not going to do what it did to Modern. I think it is slightly below Modern Horizons 1. There are powerful cards in this set. But is anything going to turn the format completely on its head? No, that's not going to happen.
No.
Good cards, but, not format turning. And especially for cEDH, which is what we're talking about today, I don't think that there's going to be anything that's going to completely change our format, contrary to what Twitter always says. So.
Oh, there's always a card that'll entirely change the format on Twitter.com, Ryan. Don't you worry.
Oh, yeah.
But now that we have talked about our overall thoughts on the set, which is, of course, Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth. Did you know the E is not capitalized? I didn't until recently. The E in Middle-earth, not capitalized.
But it's because it's hyphenated, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Ah, cool.
It's just something you want to know. We are now going to talk about our top 5 cEDH cards. Ryan and I, we're trying something a little bit new here. We have each made our own top 5 list, and we're going to go through them. If we have any differences, we're kind of going to talk it out. I'm sure I'll question at least one of Ryan's choices majorly. So let's go ahead and jump into our top 5. Ryan, what is your number 5 card for this set?
The number 5 card that I have selected, and this is already, we're going to start off strong, just so everyone knows here. So the number 5 card that I chose was the One Ring. Okay. Everyone's probably heard about it and all this other stuff, but we don't need to talk about the one of one serialized, but it is that card. So what does the One Ring say? So the One Ring is for a legendary artifact. It has indestructible. And when the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring, and then you can tap it and put a burden counter on the One Ring, then draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. At first glance, you're like, yeah, this is a flavorful card for the ring itself, but why do I care about that? And why would this be a cEDH card? So there's a couple of things about this card that I think that makes it a cEDH card. Lower colored commanders that don't really have a good way to draw cards consistently are going to love this card. And the reason that I say that is because you can tap and put a burden counter and you can lose a little bit of life. And then you can tap and draw 1 card. And then it's indestructible. And then you can, next turn, you lose 1 life. And then you tap and draw 2 cards. Then you can tap and draw 3 cards. So you're drawing 6 cards over the course of 3 turns. And you might be saying, well, that's a little too slow. Yeah, it might be too slow, depending on what you're doing with it. But there are plenty of other cards that a lot of people utilize in the lower colors that allow you to untap permanents. As a quick example, red. We're actually testing this out in Godo Bandit Warlord. Why?
I was going to say, it seems like Godo is the card where I just kind of automatically assume the One Ring will end up.
Number 1, you don't lose life until your upkeep. So if you can tap and untap this thing a bunch of times, you can just draw cards immediately off of it. But Godo uses things like Voltaic Key and Manifold Key. It untaps permanents. And so you can cast the One Ring, untap it, kind of like you do with Grim Monolith shenanigans and stuff like that. And you can actually, get a lot of value off of it. But that's not the only thing it does. Obviously, the card draw is kind of, if you want to split it into things, it's like 70 or 80% of it. The next thing is that it's indestructible. So everyone's like, I don't want to invest 4 and then it be destroyed immediately. It's not going to get destroyed immediately. Almost all things that get rid of artifacts are destroy effects. Someone might bounce it and then you got tempoed, but that's with anything, of course. But then the second line of text on there, that's also kind of a really good one. When the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. That's actually really powerful. That's a lot more powerful than I think people think it is. Protection from everything is it can't, you don't get any damage. You can't be targeted by. So like, let's say that someone is about to go off with Underworld Breach and they're going to, but maybe Thassa's Oracle isn't a thing, or they're going to try and mill you out or something like that. They can't target you with Brain Freeze because you can't be targeted. Someone tries to Thought Seize you, you can't be targeted. All those types of things. You can't be targeted. You can't be pinged to death by certain cards that are also in this set when somebody casts a wheel. So like there's a lot of value to this. This is number 5 on my list. This is not number 1 on my list. So I want to make that very clear. This is really going to see the edges of certain certain decks. And it's going to be relegated to more of the lower color decks that have a little bit more difficulty drawing cards. I can see this in mono white stacks decks. I can see this in white green stacks. I can see this in monocolored red. I can see this in these ones that have a little bit more difficulty drawing cards and maybe could use a couple of the extra upsides that come from the One Ring. But I think that this card, just tap to draw, not pay any extra mana investment, is going to be just actually really powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so for sure. That's my number 5. What are your thoughts?
I thought about putting the One Ring on my list. Spoiler, the One Ring is not on my list. And it's just it's an intriguing card. 4 is just so much mana for us to invest into a permanent in this format. If it's not like winning the game, 4 is less mana than what you spend on some game winning combos and stuff, right? But I think I do kind of agree with some of your line of thought here that like if you can cast it, and like even on turn 2, by turn 2, it's pretty good. Turn 1, you tap it, you draw a card. Turn 2, you tap it, you draw two cards. That's not the worst for 4 mana over 2 turns. If we get around to a turn 3 and you're drawing 3 cards off of it somehow, that's okay. I'm very interested at that point, but that's a long time to wait around in a cEDH game. But I think actually the part of this which is maybe most interesting to me is that you gain protection from everything until your next turn. But unfortunately, that does not stop your spells from being countered.
Nope.
That does not stop your stuff from being targeted. I would love it if it was like you and your spells got protection from everything till the end of the turn.
Teferi,
so we could have
Teferi's protection.
So we could have like a 4 color, like a 4 mana colorless, like silence almost. Is kind of almost how it would act for your first turn when you got it out. That would be a lot more interesting to me. That's what I would have loved to have seen from a cEDH perspective.
Yep.
Right now, I agree with your evaluation that I think you'll see this in some monocolor decks. I would be shocked if it doesn't end up in Godo eventually or something, or some Godo lists. But I don't think I have a use for it. So it did not personally end up on my list.
Yeah, like I said, I don't see this in any 3 color and up. I don't even see this in most 2 color and up, but I do think that there's going to be a little bit of relegation to it. And I think it's going to have to belong in the right deck. I don't think 4 is too much. I think people get really... I think they really start to over-evaluate when you compare everything to Thassa's Oracle. Well, the One Ring isn't Thassa's Oracle, but neither is Smothering Tithe. And Smothering Tithe still sees play, even though people are like, "Oh, I'm off that card." It's still a really good card. But anyway, I'll talk about this forever. So
exactly. So my number 5 is the only card you're going to be putting in the command zone in between our 2 lists, and that is mine's a little speculative too, kind of like yours, Ryan. That is Sauron the Dark Lord. This is a 3 colorless, blue, black, and red, so Grixis, legendary creature. He is an avatar horror. He has Ward, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. So this card's never getting removed. And then whenever an opponent casts a spell, Amass works 1, which if you're familiar with the Amass mechanic, you will create a 0/0 army token if you do not have one. And then you add +1/+1 counters to an army token you control equal to the like amass. So this is 1. So every time an opponent casts a spell, you're going to make a 1/1. And then if you already have that 1/1, you're going to add a +1/+1 counter to it. And then whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you, which is a whole other complicated mechanic that I could sit here and describe. But you make a single one of your creatures incrementally better over time, is what the ring tempts you pretty much does. And then, most importantly, and why this deck cares about the ring tempting you, whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 4 cards. I recently wrote an entire article about this card for TCG Player, and I kind of brewed up what my picture of a Sauron the Dark Lord cEDH deck would look like. And I do think it has legs. Obviously, 6 mana is a lot in our format. Jeweled Lotus helps and all that kind of stuff, but people who have tried to cast Crom early, or people who are now playing Tivit, another a great example of a 6 CMC powerful creature that also has an impossible to pay for ward cost. Six mana is a lot. 5 mana is a lot. 6 mana is kind of a decent amount more than 5, shockingly enough, based on how the logarithmic mana curve of Magic works. But Sauron the Dark Lord, his colors are great. He is very hard to remove. Once he's on the battlefield, you get a lot of mana from him. Like, even if you're just making like a big old 12/12 or something just by your opponents casting your spells, that's not the worst payoff. But the part that's most interesting to me is when the ring tempts you, you can discard your hand and draw 4 cards. That's quite a powerful card advantage, quote unquote, card selection engine. Not happy with your hand? All right, let's look at 4 more. And all you have to do that on Sauron is like deal damage with your army, which can be a little bit tough. People will probably be wanting to block your 15/15 creature. But I think this guy has a lot of legs. I'm not sure if it's better than other Grixis options, but I think Sauron kind of opens the door to a Grixis playstyle that's like maybe is a little more controlling. Maybe you do play some of the like quote unquote worst counter spells. Maybe you do take your time a little bit more. Maybe you do play some more mana rocks. That kind of stuff. That can be your approach to the deck more than trying to go as fast as possible. Maybe you slow down the game a little bit. Play your Sauron on turn 4. All right, opponent, cast a spell. I dare you. You're gonna turn my 6/6 into an 8/8. Let's go. And then I'm gonna hit you with it, and I'm gonna look at 4 new cards, and then I'm grinding. I'm trying to win. When I put together a list for it, I kind of tried to maximize that effect as much as possible. Look at 4 new cards. Look at 4 new cards. Look at 4 new cards. Wheel our opponents too. They can look at some new cards too. Oh, I have Notion Thief. Kind of almost like Freeze Thief Light is almost how I ended up building my Sauron the Dark Lord deck. But like you said, my number 5 is kind of a little more exploratory than anything else. I think the deck can have legs. Certainly not going to be the best cEDH deck out there in the world, but of all the legendary creatures that we've seen in this set, I think this one has the most potential to have some effect on cEDH in the command zone.
So I think this card is busted. I think this is an amazing card. I think it's going to be an amazing deck. And all those people out there saying that 6 is too much, just like you said, look at Tivit. Tivit brings down tournaments, and that is a no shortcuts, no alternate casting cost, 3 pips, 6 CMC commander. And it does work. This offers, okay, so I also think it's really important to go down what the ring tempting you does. So really quick,
yeah, for sure.
So the ring tempts you, it's 4 effects that kind of you give to a creature. It gives to what's called your ring bearer. So whenever the ring tempts you, you gain one of 4 effects. Okay, so the first one is your ring bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. The second one is whenever your ring bearer attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. And then the third one is whenever your ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at the end of combat. And then the fourth one is whenever your ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. So there's people that argued that the ring tempting you should have had a downside, and there wasn't one. But imagine just basically putting this on the army that you created.
Whenever I think that's like pretty much always the plan. Your army, Boom. Go crazy.
So, and number one, this thing might as well have hexproof. The ward is stupid. Like, it just give it hexproof. Just be done with it. So, you opponent casts a spell, you amass Orcs 1, then you put a counter on it. You know, maybe people are trying to respect the army. And then you sail in with the one person who doesn't have creatures. Then the ring tempts you. And now it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. So now that's becoming a thing. So basically, the long short of it is this thing is absolutely bananas. Move to combat, discard your hand, draw 4 cards.
Sounds pretty good to me. Yeah,
that's absolutely insane. It's absolutely busted. Grixis doesn't have a problem controlling the board. It has board sweepers in red and counter magic in blue, and it's just like it's and creature removal in black. It's like there is nothing that Grixis can't do, and this will make a really good, mid range. Is really what it is. It's a mid-range commander.
And I do find it most interesting to kind of compare it to Tivit, because like Tivit and Sauron both kind of give you things in spades. They both kind of give you cards in spades if you jump through some hoops, and Tivit gives you mana in spades at minimum, 2 treasures a turn, and Sauron gives you a huge creature in a spade. And so it's different. It's interesting to see kind of their different axis that they're operating on, because like the treasures, I think, are definitely a better return than having a big creature in most cEDH games. But the big creature does have its upsides, and I think that having the possibility of fairly consistently discarding your hand and drawing 4 cards is better than making a pile of clues. Of course, Tivit is also an A+B combo, but
I mean, Grixis has Breach and Yogg-Will and Thoracle combos. It's like this the idea that you're just constantly churning through your deck is absolutely unparalleled. The fact that whenever the ring tempts you, basically whenever you deal combat damage to a player, that's not even including all the other tertiary things that also can tempt you through the ring through the set that people might want to try out. There's a couple cards
you could put in your deck for sure. Yeah.
And so it's just absolutely, it's so strong. It's so powerful. I would be the least bit surprised if people don't start playing this and seeing this. Yeah,
exactly. Well, there are our number 5s. And before we jump into our 4 through number 1, we are going to take a quick break, and then we will be right back.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Card Conduit. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. Don't waste hours trying to find the best buy list price for your cards online. Simply send them to Card Conduit and let them take care of the rest. I've used Card Conduit multiple times already. I always use them to get the best value of my extra cards. I get fair prices for my cards and they save me tons of time. They have 3 main services. Their standard service lets you send them unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best buy list price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half of the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their new sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. They give you the best price for your cards. They work with competitive buy listing partners, including ones not open to the public. Users get an average of 19% more for their collection than they would have from a major retail buy list, even with Card Conduit's fees. Card Conduit also optimizes buy listing for card condition as well. Since vendors have different penalties for wear and tear, Card Conduit will find the best buy list price against the specific condition of a card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the show notes or the description, or use the promo code POWER, you'll also get 10% off their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's podcast.
All right, we are back, and we are going to jump right into the next one, and I'm going to start with my number 4, which is Delighted Halfling. This one saw a lot of buzz online and stuff like that. Delighted Halfling is 1 green for a creature halfling citizen. It is a 1/2. You can tap, add colorless, or tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell, and that spell can't be countered. Why do I say cavern? Because it's basically a Cavern of Souls. Basically, this is going to replace anybody who's still holding out with their what's that one card that creates snow mana?
Boreal Druid?
Yeah, this replaces your Boreal Druid. Is this the best 1-drop mana dork ever printed? No, of course not.
That's Birds of Paradise.
That's Birds of Paradise. But Delighted Halfling is actually really strong. Why? Because you can create uncounterable mana. Mana for uncounterable creatures. Now, this doesn't go as far as Cavern of Souls because this is only legendary spells. But this does allow you to cast your commander uncounterable. This does allow you to cast other legendary things uncounterable. But it's a very good dork. It's one of the best dorks I've seen printed in a while. I think the last really, really good dork we saw printed was Ignoble Hierarch back in Modern Horizons 2. This one does a very good job. It's not the best one you'll ever see out there, but it is a very, very strong green dork for this format.
Yeah, I definitely agree with pretty much everything you have to say about Delighted Halfling. And I actually have a lot more to say about Delighted Halfling, which I will expound upon when we get to its place on my list later on, Ryan. So let's talk about my number 4 card. That is Stern Scolding. It is a instant that'll cost you a single blue mana, and it reads, counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less. This is a very interesting spell that it might be like the first creature counter spell I ever want to play. I think it kind of hits on a lot of the hopes and dreams that a lot of people had with the removal spell Cut Down, which was like a black and you could destroy a creature that had a combined power and toughness 5 or less.
5, yeah.
Yeah, Stern Scolding kind of does that, a very good impression of that effect, but hits more things. This will hit your Draenith Magistrate. It'll hit Najeela. It counters Tymna. It counters Thrasios. Counters pretty much any major commander people play these days. Yeah, exactly. It counters Thassa's Oracle. This card counters a lot of creatures that you'll find in the command zone that aren't named Crom these days. Like it pretty much counters any partner commander. Or Dargo, you got to watch out for Dargo. It won't counter Ikra Shadiki if people are casting that for some reason. Yeah. Or Tivit. But this does hit a lot of the most relevant hate bear creatures. It hits a lot of the most relevant kind of like value creatures, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it actually deserves a spot in a cEDH deck because, maybe if you're looking to play this, maybe you should just place like Spell Snare instead. And then you can like also hit Underworld Breach. It still hits most of the relevant like creature targets for Stern Scolding. But I think a 1 CMC counter that hits a lot of things that we play in the cEDH format is always worth taking a look at. And I definitely will be personally trying out Stern Scolding, even though the floor of it not being able to counter Underworld Breach, it can't counter Silence. It can't counter a lot of the spells that you're just going to like objectively lose to on the spot, which is like a tough spot to be for an interactive spell. But I think that it like kind of brings enough value with it that it's at least worth trying out. And therefore it has landed in my top 5.
Yeah, I'm not really big on this card. I've said a lot of stuff about 1 mana value counter spells, and this one just doesn't really cut my criteria. You have in Magic, you have creatures and you have non-creatures. One is 1 type, one is 6 types. So like you have creatures, then you have non-creatures. Non-creatures includes enchantments, instants, sorceries, artifacts, battles, tribals. Well, I guess that's a super type, but anyway. So like, if you have something like Spell Pierce here, you can counter maybe 4 different types of spells, where Stern Scolding, you can counter 1 spell. Now I understand that spell. Yeah. I understand that creatures are absolutely, very pivotal to a lot of strategies in Commander, seeing as we have access to 1 to 2 of them at all times. And it hits a lot of those key ones, like you said. And it also hits things like win cons like Thassa's Oracle or Stacks Pieces. But the fact that, you can only counter creature spell, it can only have power toughness 2 or less, so it doesn't even hit all of them. And we can do so much more with our 1 mana value spells. This one just really doesn't cut it for me. As far as set, inclusive goes, it's a neat card, but it doesn't really take the cake for me.
Yeah, that's certainly fair. I kind of almost like Sauron. I probably could have like flipped Stern Scolding and Sauron on my list order, but I think like the ceiling on a potentially playable 1 CMC like counter is probably higher than the 6 CMC relatively niche Grixis commander. So that kind of was my thought process in my ordering here. But yes, I realistically, I'm not super duper high on this card, but I think a 1 CMC counter is kind of always worth looking at. And this one does hit a lot of stuff that people choose to play. So I'll
Yep.
be trying it out. I wouldn't doubt it if it doesn't make it long in my list, but it's my number 4 card.
Very cool. All right, moving on to number 3 for my list is Boromir, Warden of the Tower. So Boromir is 2 and a white for a legendary creature, human soldier. It has vigilance and it is a 3/3. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. All right, we're not even done, because it also says sacrifice Boromir, Warden of the Tower. Creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of turn. The ring tempts you. So this is a Lavinia effect in white, not in Azorius, which is where it was always relegated to in the past. Now it's in white. So this now gives it access to all of the decks out there that aren't in Azorius also colors. So this gives it Winota access. Oh, look, it's a human. I wonder if Winota cares about that. So you have all of these really, and it's just in a mono color, so it can be splashed into anything. This is a very powerful creature. So obviously the first one makes it so that, hey, you can't cast mana crypts, you can't cast free Force of Wills and things like that. It's a huge control element. This is going to give the Winotas and the Stax decks out there huge boons, huge leaps forward. This is an amazing card. And the second one is not irrelevant either. So sacrifice Boromir, Warden of the Tower. Creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of turn, and the ring tempts you. We already talked about what the ring tempting you does. So the ring tempted you, and it allowed you to make that creature unblockable by creatures with greater power, meaning that it, basically any creature that's going to try and block it now is just going to die. Very, very, very powerful card. I think this is going to see a lot of play in decks that run white. Is it going to see play in every single deck that runs white? No, but I think it's going to be tested in a lot of them. I would be the least bit surprised if a lot of the 3 and 4 color decks are going to try this as well. This is a really powerful effect, and it doesn't have the 2 blue pips to try and, the 2 pips of different colors to try and get this effect out of it. Amazing card. I think there's a lot of power in this.
Well, what is Ryan? My number 3 card on my list is also Boromir, Warden of the Tower. Looks like we have finally agreed upon something.
At least one thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely agree with a lot of what you were just saying there. More and more, mainly like blue farm lists have been picking up Lavinia over time. I forget who it was who kind of first said, hey, this is actually a pretty good stacks piece. It's really good in vintage and legacy. It's been played there for a reason. You can't Force of Will my stuff anymore. You can't cheat stuff into play. And Boromir does bring 1/2 of the very good 2 abilities on Lavinia into non-blue decks, which I don't think there's a world where decks want both of these cards. I think if a deck can play Lavinia, it's probably just going to play Lavinia. But Boromir being able to be added to the Sans Blue white decks, of which there's quite a few, I think that is quite interesting. I know I don't know if Dahada gamers are into it, right? But there has been kind of a rising tide in tournament cEDH thought recently amongst some of the grinders and stuff, where they say, actually, I'm just not going to interact at all. I'm not going to waste my time with any counter spells. My interaction is going to be, I play silence effects. I have Defense Grid. I have Silence. I have Grand Abolisher. You can't interact with me. Here's a win. Here's another win. Here's another win. And maybe that, maybe Boromir fits into that a little bit too. You put your Boromir into play, and then people can't deflect and swat your stuff. They can't Fierce Guardianship your stuff. They can't Force of Will your stuff. They can't Pact of Negation. They can't Force of Negation, all of this kind of stuff. Is that a good enough, kind of pseudo Grand Abolisher effect? Maybe it's good enough. Maybe we'll see that slip into those lists. I would be shocked if we don't see it in Winota. I would be shocked if we don't see it in all the classic mono white or 2 color kind of hate bear lists that people love to play. And then, in those kind of decks too, being able to sacrifice them to give your creatures indestructible till the end of the turn, that is quite strong. There's a lot of board wipes out there. Granted, it doesn't get around the most popular board wipe in cEDH, which is Toxic Deluge. A bit of a weird rules interaction that I feel like not that many people actually know about at all, is that if your creature's toughness hit 0, it doesn't matter if they have indestructible or not. They will die due to a state-based action from having 0 toughness. that does not stop them from being destroyed, which is what Indestructible protects you from. So Boromir does not save you against Toxic Deluge, which is the board wipe you'll probably run into the most, but it's kind of like free Shavakadu, free upside. And then, the ring tempts you. Why not? I know. Let's give so-and-so, make so-and-so a legendary creature that can't be blocked or whatever. It's fine. It's on there.
And if you get this back through something like Savine's Rack, which it can target, by the way, and then they'll gain Indestructible a second time. And you'll get the Tempted by the Ring again. And the second tempting of the ring says...
It's the looting one. It's probably the best one for CEDH. Yeah. It's probably the most relevant one for CEDH is the looting.
Exactly.
It's the looting mode, yeah.
That gets a little bit more into the corners and stuff like that. But that is still something that is possible. And I think that Boromir is a very powerful card. I can't wait to see it. I'm going to try it out in my Mardu deck. Whether or not it'll stay there, I don't know. But it is a very good card. Definitely
a card worth giving a shot. And moving on to my second card here. You already talked about it as your number 4, but my number 2, very Malcolm-brained over here, but my number 2 card on my list is Delighted Halfling. I am very intrigued by this card, specifically because of its applications in a couple different very commander-centric green decks. This is a great Thrasios creature. This is a great card that helps you cast your Thrasios on time. If you're Thrasios Tymna, it'll help you cast your Tymna on time very easily. Very relevant for a lot of those kind of decks. It'll make your Emil uncounterable. If you're casting your Emil from your hand to try to Dockside Loop, boom, here's an uncounterable Emil, and it'll help you cast that. In my deck of choice, Teamer Malcolm, this will make turn 2 Malcolm even more trivial, which is kind of the floor of what you're looking for in hands is a turn 2 Malcolm. So turn 1 Delighted Halfling into a turn 2 uncounterable Malcolm. Quite good. This will make turn 2 uncounterable Thrasios into another spell off of your second land. That much easier. Since Delighted Halfling is actually a rainbow dork for your legendary creatures, it makes casting Tymna a lot easier after having cast Thrasios on turn 2. If you're somehow playing a Crom deck with green in it, I don't really know if that's a thing that people do, but I don't think it's a thing that people do. But, if that was the case, an uncounterable Crom that much faster sounds pretty good to me. I think Delighted Halfling is a great boon to all of the dork decks that already exist, of which there are quite a few. This will go into every dork deck that exists, and that is quite a few these days, less than there used to be, but this is a great Thrasios card, which in the context of cEDH generalized, I think means that it's a pretty good card. So Delighted Halfling, and still, we're talking about a conditional dork here that cares about legendary spells. The grand scheme of things, that's okay. It's not awesome, but that's kind of goes back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. There's no world enders in this one, except for maybe our number 1 card. There's no world enders in this set. And Delighted Halfling is what I think of as a pretty great role player. All of the dork decks that are out there, all the Thrasios decks, my silly little Teamer deck will love having Delighted Halfling in it. And I think that's a good enough card. I don't think we're asking questions about Delighted Halfling. A lot of the other cards we've been talking about today, we're oh, I'd love to try it in my Sans Blue-White deck. Oh, I'd love to see if it's a good enough commander. Oh, yeah, we'll try out this conditional counterspell. No, Delighted Halfling, get rid of Finhorn Elves. If you're still playing Boreal Druid, get rid of Boreal Druid, shove in Delighted Halfling. You'll be happy you did it. That's my number 2, Ryan.
Yep, nothing else to say. That's exactly right. All right.
What's your number 2, Ryan?
My number 2 is Born Upon a Wind. This one saw a lot of hubbub on the internet. So Born Upon a Wind is 1 in a blue for an instant. Says you may cast spells this turn as though they had flash and draw a card. All right.
Why don't we stop playing Emergent Zone, Ryan?
We did.
Haven't we got that out of our system?
Apparently, people haven't. So, first things first. The one big thing about this that I do want to preface is that I think this is going to see a lot of play. I think every blue deck is going to see this card played. I think eventually everyone will cut it. But I think people will absolutely see this. They're like, oh, at the very worst, it's cycling 2. I'm like, that's a horrible ability. You don't put cards with cycling 2 in your deck.
Play Opt instead if you're really caring about that.
And what am I doing? Dogging on my own card that I actually chose as number 2? The reason I chose this as number 2 is because I do think that there are going to be people that are going to play this. And I think that there is going to be certain cases. There is a reason everyone played Emergent Zone. Having this as an effect is actually pretty good. You can Underworld Breach. Yeah, you can Underworld Breach on top of somebody else's win attempt. That's pretty good. That's not a bad thing. It's a dead card otherwise, and we want to minimize the amount of dead cards we have, because this is kind of one of those ones where you're like, well, I kind of want to save this for my win con. So what I think people are going to do is people are going to hold this card up, and they're going to wait for the exact moment. That exact moment will never come, because someone will just counter their Born Upon a Win, and then they're safe still. But this is just one more card that you're going to have to counter. This is going to be one of those instant removal on the spot, on the stack kind of cards. Like, if this resolves, you're in trouble. There's a lot of power that can come from casting enchantments at instant speed, casting, creatures at instant speed. This is cast spells. This isn't spells from your hand, or this is not certain spells like non-creature spells. This is just spells. Now, I know that other cards have this kind of ability a little bit, like you may cast the next spell as though it had flash or something. Like Savage Summoning has that. It can't be countered, enters with a counter. This spell can't be countered, blah, blah, blah. But Born Upon a Win says any spell. I personally thought that Emergent Zone was just kind of medium, but I have seen the power of Emergent Zone in the past where somebody wins over top. And I think that this has roughly the same power. But I still think that Emergent Zone's a powerful card. I think it'll take time for people to kind of realize that maybe this isn't worth a dedicated slot on its own. But I do think we will see a lot of Born Upon a Win over the next 3 months.
Yeah, I think this card is unplayable trash, Ryan. I am not interested in putting this in a single one of my decks. I can't imagine wanting to pay 2 mana for this effect. This is just like one of those effects that people trick themselves into playing because they think of all these incredible magical Christmas
lands. Yep.
I had that one of those magical Christmas land events once, right? We were playing a cEDH game for the channel. I was playing Prosper. I got my one epic Emergent Zone victory in. Whoa, I won in response to somebody else trying to win in my Rakdos deck at instant speed. That's crazy. I cut Emergent Zone from my deck like 3 weeks later because it's a terrible card.
Colorless land, yep.
And that's just kind of how I feel about Born Upon a Win, too. There are so many good cards you can play in cEDH.
Yep.
Please don't trick yourself into playing Born Upon a Win. Casting this spells this turn as though they had flash. I hope this spell resolves in a meaningful time frame so that you can actually do that. Jeez.
This is going to eat every single counter spell that anybody has in their hand.
Yeah, like, ooh, I'm going to cast Born Upon a Win. What are you going to do? Cast in a response to Adnos and hope that nobody has anything? I mean, come on.
Yep.
Killing me with this. Killing me with this. Please don't put this into your cEDH deck,
please,
Brian.
Please, everyone who ever said, I would have won next turn, put this in your deck and prove it. Oh, good thing you won. I would have had it next turn. And they reveal their hand. And it's nothing but 6 lands and a freaking dork. And they're like, I would have had it if this and this and this happened. It'd be like, put Born Upon a Wind in your deck. And please, God, show us how you would have won next turn. Because I hate that. I hate that saying so much. Because it's a lie. And it's people that try to steal your thunder and stuff. Born Upon a Wind will prove whether or not you would have won next turn. So put it in your deck. Give me a spell that easily can be countered and blow out your game plan and show us how powerful Born Upon a Wind is not.
All right, Ryan, you and I have the same number 1. I think your number 1 is a bit more in the vein of how you thought about number 2, where a lot of people are going to put into their decks. I think my number 1 is more along the vein because I've drinking the Kool-Aid. I think this card is really strong. This is Orcish Bowmasters. It is a black card. It will cost you a colorless and a single black. It has flash. And when Orcish Bowmaster enters the battlefield, a lot of people miss that this is an enter the battlefield effect. And whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one, they draw in each of their draw steps. Orcish Bowmaster deals 1 damage to any target. And then another thing that a lot of people miss, then Amass Orcs 1. I have a lot to say about this, Ryan. I'm going to let you go first.
This card, okay, so yeah, just so we're all very clear, I am medium on this card and Cal's really high on this card.
Yes.
So I'll start us off with why I'm medium on it. Obviously, there's a lot of this. The automatic what everyone goes to is the fact that this is good with wheels. Okay, great. That's when people actually cast wheels, and you happen to have one in a black to flash it in, and you actually have the ability to do something powerful with it. Okay, great. In that perfect land, that's when Orcish Bowmasters is super great. What about every other instance? I drew an extra card off my Crom. Great. I'm going to, I guess, Amass Orcs 1. I'll put a 1/1 counter on my 1/1. Now it's a 1/2, and I guess I'll deal 1 damage to Crom. Oh no, I'll deal 1 damage to the Adnaz player. Got him. Okay, like, yeah. Oh, but what about a Brainstorm? Okay, yeah, I'll deal 3 damage to somebody. The Amass Orcs 1 is really what I think everyone's really focusing on the wheels, but I actually think the Amass Orcs 1 is a really powerful ability in this particular one. The casting cost is super aggressive, which I think is great. I think the flash is also great. But the Amass Orcs 1, the fact that I can create a growing and growing army over and over, or if you kill it, I'll just replenish it really quickly, I think that is super strong. I think this is going to really care about Tymna decks, because you're always going to have this ever-growing army of these cards. I think it's going to be really cool for that. And you're going to get these Tymna attackers with these armies that just keep growing and growing, especially if people don't respect the Orcish Bowmasters, and they will clear the board constantly to make sure your Tymna attackers connect. The fact that people might put this in Tymna, put this into like breach decks and stuff like that and Spellslinger decks, I think it's crazy. Like, you're running maybe 8 creatures to begin with, and you're going to throw Orcish Bowmasters in there for hoping that somebody will cast a wheel. Maybe you're going to cast a wheel. Okay, that's a 2-card synergy, but you're not killing anybody with it. Oh yeah, I'll wipe the board and deal 10 damage to somebody. Okay. Now, Amassing Orcs Huge is really, really good, but people run removal in this format. Trust me, ask me how I know. I said that Dreadeth Magistrate should have been banned, and I almost got crucified online because I should run removal. Well, guess what? Everyone runs removal. So Orcish Bowmasters is great. It's my number 1. I think it's a super powerful card, but do I think it's like all of a sudden the whole format's going to be different now? No, I don't. I think it's a very powerful card. I think it's going to go well in Tymna decks and stuff like that. And I don't even think it's going to be in every Tymna deck. I think there are going to be Tymna Crom players are going to try it, found it to be very medium because they only really want to attack when they're grinding with Tymna because things didn't work out in the early game. And at that point, it's like, is Orcish Bowmasters really what you want to close out the game? Probably not. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on why it's medium. I still think it's number 1 spot. I think it's the most powerful card in this set. I think it's going to be an auto include in multiple decks. I'm going to be running it in my Tymna Jessica deck. I think there's definitely spots for this. And I think in certain circumstances, it's going to be insanely powerful. But this is not going to become the Orcish Bowmasters meta that everyone's talking about. Anyway, I've said enough. Cal, what are you thinking?
All right. So I think this card is really, really strong. I think it's really, really good. I don't think it's an auto include. It's not the second coming of, I've seen some stuff online that describes it. Think about how good Hull Breacher was. This card might need to be banned. This card will go into every single deck. All that kind of stuff. But contrary to what you said, Ryan, I think this card might actually be most powerful in like blue farm setups. Those cards, those decks already play the most wheels, which is like the situation in which Orcish Bowmaster is at its strongest. And I think what it really does is, I think this, once again, this is kind of another card that you can kind of put into your deck that just kind of hoses Thrasios decks. But again, what does a Thrasios deck want to do? They want to put a lot of these mana creatures into play. They want to get out their Rhystic Study. They would like to get out their other card advantage engine. They want to draw a lot of cards. They want to sit around all day. And then eventually, once they have their grip of counter spells and their unassailable value engines in play, they're going to like try to kill you. But okay, do you want to draw your cards off your Rhystic Study, or do you want to keep your Thrasios? Do you want to draw those cards right now? Like, all right, do you want to really draw that fourth card right now when I could kill your Seedborn Muse that I've put 3 damage on?
Yes.
Well,
yes, I would like to draw my fourth card that wasn't in my draw step. Yes.
Yeah. You know.
Yes, I would like to do that.
The amount of extra cards that are drawn in the format is kind of crazy. We've got Esper Sentinel, we've got Crom, we've got Thrasios, which does draw a card. I always thought it was like reveal it and put it into your hand. No, Thrasios draws cards.
Draws. If it's not a land, you draw.
Yes, if it's not a card, if it's not a land, you draw. There's obviously Rhystic Study. There's Mystic Remora. Trying to draw more cards. Nice Sylvan Library. Your Thrasios dies, idiot. Not dies, gets 2 damage put on it. My bad.
It gets 2
damage.
My bad.
I was like, they draw 3 cards, but one of them is the first.
First, yeah.
But I think this card just incidentally will accidentally just like mess up and complicate so many cEDH board states to the extent where you're gonna have to. It's gonna cause a lot of thonking. Maybe that doesn't mean it's a good card, but you're gonna have to think so much more about whether or not you're going to draw these cards or not, when it's like, all right, do I want to draw these cards or do I want to have Malcolm around? Do I want to draw these cards or do I want to keep my Tymna? There's a lot of situations where if you attacked 3 people with Tymna, your option is, do you want to draw those cards or do you want your Tymna to die? It's kind of like, ugh, or is Tymna 2 toughness?
It's 2. Yeah,
2.
It's 2.
Yeah. So like an average Tymna draw step, do you want to limit yourself to drawing 1 card with Tymna every turn, or do you want to get the burst of 2 cards and have your Tymna die to Orcish Bowmasters? These are the kind of tough questions that I think, a lot of people like to look at the wheel, and if you get a Orcish Bowmaster wheel, you'll have a 21, you'll have
23.
A 23, 23, and you'll get to deal 23 damage however you want. Wipe the board, deal some extra damage to people's faces. Sure, that's the ceiling. But even like the floor of this card to me seems so potentially impactful. Kill a Dork, kill an Esper Sentinel, kill somebody else's Orcish Bowmasters. It does die to another Orcish Bowmasters. It dies to a Stiff Breeze. But like more than what I like to look at for these cEDH cards is like not the ceiling, but like the floor. And the floor of this deck, kind of how I just talked about, how we can hit so many creatures with Stern Scolding, because so many of the creatures that we play are like X2s, X1s, that kind of stuff. Orcish Bowmaster, I think, will threaten a lot more creatures than I think we're anticipating right now. It's just like, okay, I'm going to kill your Najeela if you do that. Okay, your Thrasios will die if you do that. Okay, your Malcolm will die if you do that. I'll wipe your board of all the dorks that you're relying on for mana if you do that. Oh, scary, which it adds up. I think this thing is going to add up a lot. And then at the end of the day too, you'll just untap with a 6/6 that you didn't have on the turn before you cast your Orcish Bowmasters or whatever. This card just, I've always been shocked by the performance of pingers, like things that can just deal 1 damage as a one-off or like a shock or whatever effects in this format. And something that is so repeatable as Orcish Bowmasters is, specifically while being able to flash it in and specifically triggering off of and preying on the most sought after effect in our entire format. I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. I don't think it's going to need to be banned. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a couple black decks that don't want to be playing it, but I would be entirely unshocked at all if this is the card that kind of makes people think about playing Thrasios decks even more. And like me as a Malcolm player, I can't win through Orcish Bowmasters. I'm terrified of this card. All these kind of different examples, but I don't know. I've been drawing on and on about it, but I think this card is sneakily a lot more powerful than a lot more people are thinking, but in a different way entirely. Just the effect it'll have on the table of, ooh, okay, yeah, nice Rhystic Study, I'm going to wipe your board, and all that kind of stuff. It just seems much more powerful to me in that kind of, incidentally, you're dealing 1 to 2 damage a turn type of effect that seems to me to be very powerful.
Yep. When I look at this card, I look at it a little bit like Opposition Agent. When people said, oh, Opposition Agent, this format is completely over. This is going to be Oppo Agent meta now. It has flash. It can stop all my tutors. oh my gosh, this
We're
meta is
done.
all the Oppo agent meta.
Yeah, exactly.
And what happened?
Nothing. It's good. It's very good. But you don't really get like BTFO'd by it or anything like that.
But yeah, but what ended up happening? Everyone started asking, I fetched. Is that good? Because they're asking for Oppo agent. So there's that little extra mental energy. But then after that, everyone says, yeah, I do have one. You're like, you got my worldly tutor. You got me. And then no one else feeds into it.
Yeah.
You think that I'm going to be like, yeah, man, I'm going to totally attack with 3 Timna attackers, and then you're going to kill my Timna. You got me so good. First of all, you have an amassed army over there, so I'm not connecting with you, right? So that's automatically just 2 cards. And why would I kill it? Why would I kill my Timna? Why would I do that?
Exactly.
I'm just not going to feed into the Orcish Bowmasters.
Because I have an Orcish Bowmasters, you can only draw 1 card a turn off your Timna.
Yeah. Which is like
basically a notion thief. Still pretty good, but, not as good as drawing 2 or 3 cards a turn with Timna.
Exactly. So
it's kind of like the world's weirdest hate bear. It's kind of like the
and
floor.
That's the thing. It's like I 100% agree with you. If you land a turn 1 Esper Sentinel and I land a turn 1 Orcish Bowmasters, Esper Sentinel's dead. Or if you draw off of Esper Sentinel and I have it later, that Esper Sentinel's not sticking around. That's great. That's great. That's a huge effect. I love that, especially since Esper Sentinel sees so much play. It's so much play, so much to the point where we know that the one thing that we always get with Ranger Captain of Eos is always Esper Sentinel. Yeah. So that even, in some effects, even nerfs that. But this does not stop my win con. Oh, you killed my dork? Okay.
Got me. Yeah.
Yeah, got me. You got my dork. It's like that's one of the most least impactful cards in my deck. And you got my Orcish, you got it with my Orcish Bowmasters. You got me. And it's like, that's not enough. And I think that's the thing that people keep forgetting. I think people instantly go to wheel, think I'm going to totally get somebody with this wheel. And it's like, no one's going to cast a wheel into this. The only thing you're going to do is you're going to maybe get somebody that's casting a wheel. You're against a Roger Silas player and they're going to turn 2 wheel. Yeah, I'm going to get him with my Orcish Bowmasters then. That's when that's going to happen. But every other time you just like flash out Orcish Bowmasters on your end step, it's just going to sit there because everyone's going to respect it, especially since they're so afraid of it. And it's just going to be very, very mid. And then they're going to end up cutting it after a while because they're going to see that everyone's going to respect it. No one wheels into an Orcish Bowmasters, just like nobody tutors into an opposition agent. No one, once this hits the battlefield, is ever going to wheel, is ever going to do anything. So it's going to be up to you to have this 2-card synergy. That doesn't win you the game, by the way. Wheel plus Orcish Bowmasters does not equal game over like Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation. It just means huge lead, But and everyone still gets their 7 cards to easily do something to your Orcish Bowmasters. So that's kind of the thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like
I said,
I think we're both right.
Yeah, I think we're both right too. Because once again, I'll say this was my number 1. This was my most powerful. This was my top card of this set. I'm not saying this card's not powerful because I think it is. I think it's very powerful. Do I think it's the second coming? No, of course not.
And that has been our set review, our top 5 cEDH cards, our overall thoughts about the latest, and I think the greatest, Universes Beyond product yet. The Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth. Can't wait for the set to actually release. I guess by the time that this podcast releases, it'll be pre-release weekend. Sweet. But we would love to know, what cards are you most excited about for in this set? What are you trying to put into your cEDH deck? Do you disagree with any of our opinions? Do you think Orcish Bowmasters absolutely has to be banned because you've already been playtesting it some and it's just like removing Thrasios from the format? We don't know. Make sure to let us know, and make sure to give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast aggregator. You'd be surprised how much it helps people find us. You can also check us out on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and more. All links are in the episode notes. That wraps it up for this episode of the podcast. Tune in next time when we talk more about our favorite format in our favorite game, Magic the Gathering. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.